Hello, my Kindred friends. This is Christian. I'm coming to you today with our final installment of the Collector to Creator series. We will be using the same Pixie dust stamp set, but then we're going to pull in some pattern papers and show how we can harness our papers in our card making. We'll be using the Celestial pack from Kindred, a piece of colored cardstock that will be the base for our Fun Fold card. By using a fun fold card, we're going to add a little more character to our card itself while we up our coloring. This is the fun fold card that we're going to make. It consists of a card base that is scored at certain intervals and will be utilized as the base for the card itself, obviously card base. And then we are going to add our pattern paper in pieces so that when it bursts open, we'll have those same colors, we'll have the same look, and just have that same little character. I do suggest making a template that you can reference for when you are making your card. I've made mine from a piece of copy paper and I wrote on it all my different measurements and my sizes. This can be adjusted to any size card as long as you have a piece of paper that will be the dimensions that you need. For this card base itself, it is 7 inches by 8¼ inches. So I will be cutting down my paper to that size. You can adjust this card for any size card that you prefer to make. You just have to add half the size of the base card itself. So for this example, it's 5½ by 4¼ So I am adding 2¾ to the top and to the side of the card base. Just know you'll have limitations on the size of cardstock that you own. In the US, we have 12 by 12. You can get some larger parameters for larger cards, but just know that you have to look at your math. I know we're going back to school. I suck at math, but I could figure this out, so I know you can too. Just make sure that you have the right size for what you need. Because my card stock is a colored yellow, I want to have a spot that is white where I will be able to have my sentiment and some trails of stars, some little extra dust. So I'm cutting down a 5½ by 4¼ cardstock panel by taking off a 1/4 inch from the top and the side of the panel. With my card base all ready to go, it was now time to start cutting my pattern paper. I again made a template that will show me the dimensions that I need to cut my paper down to. So my side panels will be cut at 2½ inches wide and they will be 5¼ inches tall. This will allow me to cut off the top triangle at the 2¾ line so that this piece will fit perfectly onto the card pan or the card base. The Celestial cardstock is double-sided, so I want to ensure that when I am doing my cutting down of my paper, that I am cutting it to be on the side that I need it. So meaning on the outside of the card, I want the pattern to be one way, and then on the inside of the card, I want the pattern to be I want it to look the same. So when I get to the point where I'm cutting off the triangles on the top of these two papers, I will make sure that I am cutting the triangle at the correct angle. Next, I will be cutting down the top panels. So this piece of paper will be cut at 2½ inches again, and then I'm going to need it to be 4 inches long. So I will cut that down and this will be for the top tucked panel and the inside tucked panel. Again, making sure that I am cutting the paper in the same pattern and direction if that is important to the paper that you're utilizing. Our prep is almost complete. We have the card base, we have the inside panel. We have two longer pieces for the inside and outside of the left-hand side of the card. And then we have the top and the bottom for the top of the card. We then need to have a square. The square is 2½ by 2½ inches. I did have a piece of scrap cardstock that I utilized to trim that down. You may have to start a new page dependent because I was just going through my stash. Again, one of my favorite cardstock packs that is available from Kindred. All right, we have 4 more cuts to go. So we have our squares that will go on the top and the bottom. We have our 2 side panels that go along the height of the card, and then we have the side panels that go along the width of the card. The first panels that we are going to cut is going to be the 2.5 by 4-inch piece of paper. I really do believe in keeping templates available. You'll see that my template is just a piece of scrap cardstock pattern paper that's bright green on one side, and then looks like I used it for stamping off or maybe doing a background stamp on something, who knows. But it's just some paper and it works out fine for what I need it to do. Instead of having to do math, because again, I can't measure, I cannot cut a straight line, none of those things work for me. A template works best because I'm able to put a mark on my piece of paper where I need to cut it, and I don't have to worry about doing math, especially when it comes to cutting at an angle. I There's all kinds of different tips and tricks. Some people use a little squares on the cutter to make sure that it's at the right angle. Some people have cutters that have angles on it. I'm not so cool. I again use my template, and that's going to give me the easiest result. I put my measuring mark at the side of the blade, and then I just line up the other piece of the paper at the other side, and I get a perfect angle. I will save my triangle because we'll be utilizing those to place it in the inside and the outside top panels. While I cut down my second page, because again, I wanted to have the same pattern showing, you're going to see that I turn my template upside down. And again, place the same marks because I'm still going to have to cut at that angle, well, once my gel pen works again, and then I'll go ahead and do that cutting. You'll now see that my pattern is matching on the front and the back because I use the same side of cardstock just by flipping my template over and making my cut at the right angle. I repeat the same process on the 5.25 by 2.5-inch piece. I will make my little hashtag at where my template says, which is 2 3/4. I line it up and cut it. I do flip the same template over again, utilize it so I have the same pattern paper showing, and then I make the same type of cut to make sure that that's what I would like. It's now time to score the card base. I try to start with my small scoreboard, and you'll see that I'll get out the Big Mama just because I don't have time to sit there and flip flop it, and I never line it up straight again. As we know, I have issues. We are going to score at that 2 3/4 score line. So you can put your template on there just to make sure you know where you're scoring so that your paper will fold the correct way. After the panel has been scored along that long line, we'll then score across the top of the card base. Once you have these 2 sections scored, go ahead and reinforce those score lines. Fold it and secure it with a bone folder just to make sure that you truly have a good reinforcement. This will also help you when it comes time to do your diagonal, as you'll be able to see where that halfway part is between both of the score lines. The diagonal fold is a little more trickier to do on a smaller scoreboard. If you do have a rotary trimmer or a trimmer that has the line that you glide your cutter through, you can do your scoring on that type of device or get out your Big Mama scoreboard. To make my job easier, I did pull out my Big Mama scoreboard because, as you see, one, it doesn't fit on there, but two, I utilized my template again. I took my template and I was able to see where I needed to do my measurement. I could just make a little tick mark with my pencil to line up my scoreboard, or if you like rulers, you could measure up to where that score would be, which would be like 1 3/4 on the short side and then 2 3/4 on the other side. This now completes our card base. We have it ready to go. We reinforce our folds and we are able to fold it in and out perfectly. The next step in the card was just to glue all the pieces together. I'm not going to make you watch that. You know how to glue something on. Now you can see how the card base comes all together with the matching pattern on all sides in a simple little burst. Yep, it's fun. I play with it a lot. Before I place the inside panel to the card, I want to get my stamping on it because I'm going to be doing some heat embossing. I want to have my sentiments stamped in gold embossing powder and have a trail of dust going down the side panel that is visible when the card is assembled. Because I'm a multitasker, I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my little pixie. The Pixie was stamped with an alcohol-safe ink for doing my coloring with the Olo marker. And then my sentiment was done in multiple stages. Because I am not the most graceful person in the world, I do each iteration independently, meaning I will stamp, emboss, stamp, emboss, stamp, emboss. And this will give me my pixie dust across the top, and then I'll do the pixie dust across the bottom. This will then be adhered to my panel. At this point, I forgot to do that. So I come back in a little bit later, and all of a sudden, miraculously, you will see the little pixie trails in the corner of the paper. And full disclosure, when I originally made the card the first time, I made my little character and then I put some glitter on her and it made her look like she had a beard. And that was not the look I wanted for my little pixie. So I'm going to go ahead and take that panel apart and re-stamp my image, and then we can talk about coloring. I wanted to leave this in here because I wanted to talk about how we as crafters, when we see things done in videos, we think that, holy cow, they're amazing how they do that. They never have any mistakes. That's way out there. There are so many mistakes had. I call them opportunities to learn. It's not really a mistake. So I went ahead and I peeled my little pixie off of my card, and no harm, no foul. No one will ever know. And now I'm going to redo it. And it only took me a couple seconds because we are using the same technique that we covered in the last series. I am coloring only with one marker for each section of my pixie. I then will add dimension by digging out my color pencils. I know you all have them in your stash. It could even be the good old-fashioned ones you had from grade school. That's going to work. You just have to get a color in the same family and you can add some dimension. I do make little swatches on my piece of cardstock so that I can compare my pencils to the actual ink of my marker. I did use Olo markers. I used BG02, YG14, Y2.3, and OR 7.1. I will then go digging through my stash. I have the Prismacolors color pencils, which are a little intense. You don't need to have this many. Do I use half of these? Do I use a quarter of them? Okay, do I really even use them? No. So use what you have. You can also use just a single black pencil and just add a little shading so that it gives that illusion of dimension. I am adding color to various spots wherever something overlays something else. You will also see I change how I hold my pencil. I do this because I put too much pressure down when I'm holding a pencil towards the tip of the pencil. And if I go to the back of the pencil, I have less pressure to put down. So then I'm not getting those streaks or those hard lines that never blend out. Another great tool for when you're using colored pencils is a pencil sharpener. You want to make sure that your pencils are nice and sharp. A dull pencil will not distribute the pigment as nicely onto the piece of paper. You also can see that I have a little arrow on my piece of paper. This is reminding me what way that I have my light source. So where do I want to have my highlights and where do I want to have my shadows? I also use a blending pencil to smooth out any hard lines that I see. Now my little pixie was complete. I'm able to then do a little fussy cutting and reapply her to my card base. Bye bye bearded pixie, hello cute pixie once more. This time when I added my glitter pen, I did it sparingly and I did not have a bearded pixie. This fun fold card is a great way to show off your coloring by just still using that one coloring method with a single layer of color and adding dimension with a color pencil. We're not comparing ourselves to others. We have no joy stealers. We're okay making mistakes. That's how we learn. Hello, look at my bearded pixie. And just like that, we are now becoming creators. Wow, friends, that one took a little bit longer than I was expecting, and we have one more card to go. In this card, we're going to talk about how to do two-tone coloring. This is a great entry way into adding dimension into your cards using alcohol-based markers. For this card, we'll still be utilizing the Pixie Dust stamp set. We'll also be using the Adeline dies and then a circle die. And you can use any circle die from your stash. I'm using this because this is going to be the face to my clock. This card is a lot simpler for design. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through a lot of the sections and really focus on talking about coloring. The characters were stamped in alcohol-safe ink and set aside. Then I pulled out my circle die. I did do a little ink blending on the die to give it a yellow glow, doing more color from the outside and having it lighter towards the center. This will give that clock face a little more dimension and mimic what I'm visioning in my head as the clock face. I did use a very large circle. This circle fits inside the parameters of a 5.5 and by 4.25 inch card. This will give the illusion that the clock is huge and our little peoples look very small on it. So now we're going to start doing some coloring. When I first started coloring with alcohol markers, I was very intimidated. I saw all the influencers and master colorists out there just whipping through their coloring and it looked amazing. And I tried adding 3 or 4 colors in and all of a sudden I was bleeding outside the lines and the colors weren't blending nicely or it was really streaky or I got very frustrated and it was very irritating to me because I wanted to be like them. And that's when I realized I'm giving them my joy. I'm not going to compare myself to anyone else. So I had to come up with my approach to doing coloring. So in this series, we've talked about a couple different processes. First, no coloring at all because, hello, quick card, looks great. Bam, just like that. Then we talked about just doing a single layer of color, adding a couple highlights with a gel pen, and it looks great. It's perfect. It reminds me of all the coloring that was in cartoons and movies from eras bygone. Today we talked about how to add more dimension in with a color pencil, and then now with the alcohol markers. When I first started, I chose to just do 2 colors. And you will see that in a lot of my cards, even the ones that I designed for the Kindred releases, they're typically 2, sometimes 3 layers of color. I don't give as much dimension to my cards because I want the characters to look like they belong from the era that they're in. So by doing this 2 color tones, I'm able to achieve that look and then still be able to have a little bit of dimension. Picking colors is one of the hardest things when you're looking at your colors. There are some great tools and resources out there for you, lots of amazing classes and instructors who will be able to help you and guide you on your color selection. The biggest thing when working with your alcohol markers is knowing your markers. It doesn't matter on the brand, the style, it just has to be something that you know and you work with. And the only way you're going to know how to use them is by practicing. Yep, you're going to have a few things that you're going to suck at, and that's okay. That's, again, how we learn. When I'm selecting my colors for my characters, I am just looking for 2 like tones. I want a dark tone and I want a light tone. This dark tone and light tone are going to be just my 2 go-to colors for those 2 people. I do utilize swatches so that I can see a color comparison of the two tones to see if they look well together. If I have any type of question if they're going to match together, I will just make little splotches off on the corners of the paper that I'm going to cut off. That way I can have a visual to see, is that going to be too dark, or is that dark going to be too light, or there's not enough contrast between the two. Coloring takes time. I've been showing you this video in real time. Do I move really fast? No. And that's okay, because you need time for that ink to absorb into the paper, and then it can blend a little bit better. There is differences in the markers that are out there. I utilize three main brands. I utilize my Olos, I utilize Altenew Artist Markers, and then I also use some Copics. I do also have a few blends. I do not have as many of those, so I can't speak to how those markers work. As you practice, you are going to find what way works best for you. Knowing how your markers respond to the type of paper you utilize is another key to having nice coloring. In this card, I'm using my Olo markers on Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock. Because I've practiced on this cardstock many times, I know the color intensity that I'm going to have, how much color I need to lay down if I do a single layer and then come in with my dark layer and come back in with a single layer again, or if I just do one layer of color. I chose one layer of color because that's what works best for me on this type of cardstock. I did speed this up because you've been here a long time already. I will slow it down here just one moment to talk about hair. When coloring hair, it's really important to keep that striation available and visible. And this means that you want to have small little flicks that are thicker at the base and thin out towards whatever angle you're moving to. So on her, I'm moving up, and then I'm also going to bring some back down from the top of her head. This is going to give the illusion of hair and the highlights associated with it. You can get a better blend in here if you utilize the three tones of colors, or you use the white that is inside your cardstock as your highlight. But I have found that if I go in with my darkest color, lay down my color, get my little flicks there, I can then come in with my light color, fill in those blanks, pull out that color a little bit more, and be able to give the illusion of the streaks of hair. Sometimes when I come in with my light color, it may blend out a little too much. So then I'll just bring my dark color back in again and add some more flicks just to give it that dimension and a little bit look of a hairline. I keep repeating this to get more and more color saturation into my paper and to allow those darks to be darks and those lights to be light. So I repeat over and over again until I am satisfied with the color variation. When I was finished coloring, I went ahead and fussy cut out my images. I cut them on the line to the best of my ability. To hide any failures in my cutting or inability to cut on a line, because again, I have issues, I will use my bone folder to smooth out any of the roughness from my cutting, and then I'll pull out a fine liner marker, and I use just a brush marker to go around the edges because I don't want any white to be seen. This just gives the images a real pop. It makes them look like they're part of the scene without having the white edge showing. It just brings up those characters, just the quality up a notch by hiding it. When doing this, always do it from the back of the image unless you want to draw on the front of the image and they get really mad, because there's not a way you can take pigment ink off of the front of a card, no matter how much you tried. I mean, just take my advice. Do this from the back. Otherwise, you end up with it in the front. And then you're sad. Very, very sad. And probably don't talk very nicely for a little bit. Finally, my little characters here got a little eye refresh. I use a little black ink to pop their eyes, and they go flying off into the sunset while we work on the clock face. I lined up my numbers as I want them on the card because again, it's going to just be half of the clock that I'll be utilizing. So why do anything on the other side? To make sure my alignment was perfect, I did use the grids on my glass mat and then a piece of repositional tape. This is just some Scotch repositional tape that I'm utilizing for this. I line them up, I stick it down, I put the glue on the back, and then stick it to the piece of paper, and then repeat. Next up was the hands to the clock. All I did was pull out a piece of scrap black paper because I'm a paper hoarder and I keep every scrap there is available, even if I know I'll never use it. But again, we have issues, it's okay. I went ahead and made two hands. Then I also cut out a small circle die that will be the cover to the hands on the clock. I don't know what that thing's called, but the little cover that goes over the top that holds it in place like a pin thing. Well, anyway, I cut that out of some black cardstock and I adhered the hands to the clock at a 7:15 time frame. We're in the home stretch. The clock was adhered to an A2 black cardstock panel, so 5.5 by 4.25 inch panel, and then attached to a card base. Off camera, I applied foam tape to the characters and then adhered them to the card base. Again, I went through, added some black eyes to deepen that color, and then some white highlights. To finish the card, I did stamp my sentiment on a piece of white cardstock, utilized the jig that I had made from a previous use of my sentiment strip dies, and adhere that to the side of the card base, trimming off the overhang. As I finish making the card, I just want to talk about how far we've come along. We've told that negative committee in our head to sit down and shut up. We have not let other people steal our joy. We are brave enough to suck at something new. Taking that first step to being a creator is scary, and the process can be so overwhelming. But what you get out of it in return is so much more. This three-part series, I hope, brought you inspiration to try something new and to step out of your comfort zone. There's so many great stamps out there for us to play with. Post your creations so we can celebrate with you. We want to see what you're doing. You can post it in the Facebook group or on Instagram. We're out there. We want to see what you're doing. Please come join us. Until next time, my friends.